All right, welcome back to our unit here on elasticity. We're going to just jump right in. What we're going to be talking about is we just finished talking about some of the elasticity terms, in particular thinking about inelastic versus elastic. Now we're going to talk about the price elasticity of supply, cross-price elasticity, and income elasticity. So to get there, I want to remind you about the determinants of demand. Remember, in economics, we define demand as the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So that's what we were talking about with the own price elasticity of demand. But there's other things that determine elasticity of demand: the price of other goods, income, taste and preferences, expectations. So own price elasticity is about that first part, the quantity demanded related to the price of the good. And what we're going to be focusing on today is the other determinants of demand as well as thinking about supply. In particular, we're going to talk about the price of other goods and income. So when we're dealing with the price of other goods, the name we give for that is cross-price elasticity of demand. So where we have the other goods, but what we're looking at for own price elasticity is the responsiveness of its own price. For cross-price elasticity, we're looking at the responsiveness of another good's price. So you can see our elasticity formula, instead of featuring the price of the own good in the numerator, we have the percentage change in the price of some related good, which we'll label Y. So again, elasticity is still the relationship between an action or a stimulus and the response measured in percent changes. Now we have own quantity. We're emphasizing the own part here with the percentage change of the other price. And again, we can map this to numbers. We're getting a unitless number for elasticity. So thinking about maybe a 10% change in a related goods price, if we saw a change in the good, let's think about maybe coffee here being the own good and maybe tea being the other good. If the price of tea goes up 10%, maybe we see a 10% increase in our own quantity. Now, with the elasticity of demand, because of the law of demand, elasticity of demand is generally negative, and we ignore the sign a lot of the times. The sign of the cross-price elasticity has important meaning. So in this example that we're given with coffee and tea, we have an elasticity that's greater than 0. In particular, with a positive 10% change in price and a positive 10% change in own quantity, we have a positive elasticity of 1. This is actually telling us that these goods are substitutes. Coffee and tea are potentially substitutes. Coke and Pepsi are substitutes for most people. That means if the other option is getting more expensive, you are going to move towards the option that we're talking about, coffee being the own price, own good, or Coke being the own price and own good. If, on the other hand, an price increase of a related good is leading to a decrease in purchase, a negative percentage change in quantity, that's a negative elasticity when we have opposite signs. When we have negative elasticity, this is the case of the goods being complements. This is the case when goods are kind of being bought together as a bundle. hot dogs and hot dog buns, or coffee and donuts. And so if part of the bundle becomes more expensive, you're less likely to buy the bundle as a whole. Therefore, an increase in the price of donuts will decrease the purchases of coffee on the margin. Now, some students get confused because positive feels like it's kind of the sameness and moving togetherness, and complements also feel like this togetherness, and that's one of the places where it's not necessarily helpful, the fact that we don't emphasize the negative sign of own price elasticity, because the sign for complements has the same sign as own price elasticity, which is always negative, because they are moving together. But they're moving together in a negative direction because that demand curve is downward sloping. Also, it's possible that you could change the price of another good, and there's no impact. There's a 0% change in quantity. What that's telling you is maybe those goods aren't related, or maybe there's competing things that are canceling them out. But the size and the distance or closeness to 0, just like with elasticity, is telling you about the strength of the connection and the strength of the impact. Generally, cross-price elasticities will be smaller than own price elasticities. The biggest determinant of demand is going to be the own price of that good, especially normalized in terms of percents. All right, so we talked about the price of related goods. Now let's talk about income. Income is one of those determinants of demand, so a change in income can change how you are purchasing a product. So the elasticity of income, or income elasticity, again, our response is that percent change in quantity demanded, but our action is a percent change in income. We can once again think about this as sort of mapping to numbers. So if we have a 10% change in income, if we had a 10% change in quantity demanded, that is 1. Now, we have special names for goods that when your income increases, you buy more. We call those normal goods. And if you remember, goods where if your income increases, you buy less, those are inferior goods. Right? So we have this classification, whether the elasticity is negative or positive, and I expect you to be able to move both ways. If there's a good that you know is normal, you should know that it's going to have a positive income elasticity. If there's a good that you know has a positive income elasticity, you know that it is normal. You also can have income elasticities of 0, where there's no sort of response in terms of a change in quantity demanded. Again, it's a good that's kind of not related to how much income you have. So again, the sign has meaning. Greater than 0 is normal, your income goes up, you buy more. Less than 0 is inferior, your income goes up, you buy less. Some textbooks make a further distinction, and I want to introduce this as well, between 2 types of normal goods, so subtypes of normal. And this is made around the point where elasticity hits 1. So if your elasticity is less than 1, this means that as you are getting more income, as your income increases, you're shrinking the share of your income and your spending that is going towards that good. So basically, a 10% increase in your income, you're going to continue to increase spending on housing, but you might kind of branch out to other things as well. We label those necessities. Goods that have an income elasticity greater than 1, meaning as we buy more or as we have increases in income, the percentage increase is higher than our income increase, this means we have a growing share of spending, and we call those goods luxuries. The last thing I want to define for you, it's fairly straightforward, but all the three that we've talked about, own price elasticity of demand, cross price elasticity of demand, and income elasticity of demand, are focused on how quantity demanded responds to price changes. But we also learned how price impacts supply as well, and we can ask the same question about how does a price change impact supply in percentage terms. So again, hopefully you're getting very familiar with the mathematical definition of elasticity, but we're talking about what is the reaction in terms of a percentage change in quantity supplied from an action, a 1% change in price. So that's just how it looks in a formula. Percentage, remember that large delta sign we use for change. Percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. If we have a linear demand curve, just like we did with the price elasticity of demand, we can actually use basic algebra to rearrange and write this in a formula that allows us to use that continuous and unchanging slope of our demand curve and easily calculate at any point along the demand curve the elasticity. And just as a reminder, when we're talking about slope, we're meaning the slope of the graphed demand curve, graphed supply curve. So that wraps up what I wanted to introduce in terms of elasticity terms. What we'll be talking about in this next video is what determines elasticity in terms of making a good more or less elastic. And we'll talk about both in terms of supply and demand for that. Anyway, as always, email me if you have questions. I hope you're doing well, and take good care.